In 2020, the entire world had a really unlucky roll, and we've been dealing with the economic impact of that roll ever since. In the monopoly world, everyone starts out on equal footing. So when that unlucky roll happens, everyone has to pay up, but at least they have a fighting chance to make it work and stay in the game. In the real world, it's not quite that simple. As we know, some players, or countries, start off with a lot more money than others. And as we're seeing with the impact of the pandemic over the past year, every player was affected, wealthy countries and vulnerable countries. But not everyone managed to weather the roll quite the same. For example, wealthy countries like G20 nations spent about $14 trillion on pandemic response and rolled out unprecedented measures to support their economies. At the same time, the world's most vulnerable countries had to scrape the barrel trying to repay their debts and find ways to fund vaccines. What's more, these same countries will go on to face huge challenges when trying to pay for vital services like healthcare and education due to this economic cost. It's massively unfair, but this doesn't have to be the case. Much more can be done, and it all starts with a bank, or rather, the International Monetary Fund. The IMF has the ability to issue what are called special drawing rights, or SDRs, to all players. These were designed precisely to help countries respond to global crises. And if you haven't noticed, that's exactly what we're in right now. SDRs aren't money per se, but they're something called a reserve asset. And they can be converted into currency like the US dollar or British pound. Think of it like a voucher or coupon. This happened in 2009 to get countries out of the global financial crisis. And the good news is there's already been an indication from the IMF and its member countries that they will give out more SDRs, $650 billion worth of them to be exact. But that's just step one, because the way that the IMF divvies these up is based on the size of countries' economies, which means that wealthy countries will get the majority of the SDRs. So African nations, for example, will only get 5% of the total amount, which is crazy because that's one of the continents that need them the most. So that leads us to the very necessary step 2. We need wealthy countries to share a portion of their SDRs with low-income countries so that they have a more equal opportunity for recovery. We need the IMF and all countries to support this plan. G20 countries have the power to make this happen, but they need to act fast because we're already a year into this pandemic and the damage will only get worse. The important thing to remember is that this isn't charity. Wealthy countries aren't taking money from their own budgets and giving it to other governments. This is simply a simple solution that has worked before and will ensure that every country has a better chance to come out of this economic crisis. The pandemic is costing the global economy $10 billion a day. There's no time to waste. When it comes to the COVID-19 crisis, we shouldn't be playing against each other. Every country deserves a chance to recover from COVID-19, and leaders need to be doing whatever they can to make sure that happens.